What's up? This is Dominique Beaumonte, and you are listening to Season with Salt, the podcast. What's up? You, again, are listening to Season with Salt, the podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to be a committed listener, and as you may already know, my name is Dominique Beaumonte, and I am your host. And I want to talk to you about the journey of learning more about my family. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar, my mother is a severe schizophrenic, and I was only partially raised by her, on and off, between the ages of 0 and 9, before she began to have more children. She started having more children at the age of, when I was 6. So I had a brother when I was 6, and she had another child when I was 8. And just to sort of give you the highlight of that, essentially both of my brothers ended up going to the same foster home, and it was important for my mother for us to be raised together. So we ended up having the majority of our adolescence, or theirs rather, because they're a little bit younger than I am. We grew up together, which is a blessing. And then, of course, when I went out to college, then we did separate times there. A couple of different variables impacted that. But me and my two brothers are very close. We talk regularly. Like a lot of families, we do not consider ourselves to be half siblings or anything like that. But our family has a storied history, and not all of the details of our family is clear. And so it was important for me to want to learn more, not just about my mother's side of the family, but also my father's side of the family. So I did grow up with a man in the home who, I'll just say that. And so, yeah, I'll say that. But it was important for me to know a little bit more about my father. And honestly, I think sometimes you forget you can take for granted, well, other people maybe can take for granted what it feels like to have both parents, to know all of the people that are connected to you, to know where you come from. And because it was never something that I had, it was never important for me to have that. It never was a deal breaker to me. I'm not the type of person that really has, sought to have a lot of these answers about my upbringing or my family. But of recent, things have changed a little bit. So let me just kind of tell you how we got to this place. So I've heard a lot about the ancestry test, 23andMe, Ancestry.com, but I had never had any interest myself. I didn't know what it entailed, but a friend of mine that attends my church was telling me about a sister that she had reconnected with. And she had reconnected with the sister because the sister did an Ancestry.com test, and the results concluded that she had a sister and a father, of course. So she was able to connect with the father, and the father shared with her that, hey, you have these other siblings. One of them is very close to you in the Sacramento area. I think you all should meet. Well, it just so happened that at one of the friend's children's birthday party, I'm sitting across the table from her, and just out of curiosity, I started asking her more questions about the process, like how did she come about Ancestry.com, what made her interested, because she's younger. So she was explaining it to me, and I just had this knee jerk reaction. I just said, "Okay, fine, I'll go and buy the kit myself." So I think I paid like $59 for the kit. I may have paid $100 for the actual website. I don't recall. And that night, I became very much invested in like building a family tree based on the family members that I knew, and it was pretty exciting. I hadn't even thought about what the rest of the process would look like, because to me that part was exciting in general. Just based on the family members that I knew, I was able to connect with people that, or I was able to see people in my family tree that I didn't know. So that I thought that was fascinating. I didn't even think about the actual process. So probably like maybe a couple of weeks later, I got a small uh, box, a very small box in the mail. And the small box had just a small tube in it, and the instructions were relatively simple. You spit in the tube, put the tube back in the thing, ship it back to them. So I think early September, I spit in the tubes, took it to the UPS, sent it. Really didn't think anything else of it. Um, Ever so often, I would check the app because I would be building family trees and just continuing my journey to find people that I was familiar with. And I noticed that in this app, it communicates that your DNA results will be available on October the 26th. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's around my birthday. That's something to look forward to. I thought nothing of it. Um, I'm on the phone with my brother one day, and I had mentioned to them, my brothers both are familiar with their fathers, so they they were encouraging me in the journey, saying, I think this is something that's valuable to you, something that's important to you. We really think that you should do it. So I'm doing it. I'm on the phone with my brother one day, and I'm talking to him, and I recall that I had kind of looked at the date again, and it went from the DNA results being available on October the 26th. It then said they would be available on October the 18th. So I'm like, cool. I'll go check it out. That date happens to be October the 17th, and while I'm on the phone with him, I have this day planned where I'm going to go out and take care of some business and sit by the water. I have this full day planned. Well, I noticed on the 17th that there have been family members based on DNA who have populated in this app. And the way that the app works is when you get your DNA results, it essentially tells you people who have taken the test, who have proven to show their same DNA. So it has first cousin, second cousin, third cousin, fourth cousin. So essentially, I started. I worked from the top down. Right. I looked at all of the people who had available open family trees. I looked for names that family members and I may have had in common. I messaged people who, after I looked, so I essentially noticed a couple of things with regard to people who share the same DNA as me. I noticed that there were a lot of people with the name White. Um, and then I noticed that there were two names in particular, aside from White, there were two names in particular that kept reoccurring in some of the, and this is all on my paternal side, because I already have figured out my maternal side for the most part. So I noticed that these people are white. I noticed there is a woman by the name of Luella who appears in a variety, and I'm talking about hundreds of, not just like 10 or 15, I'm talking about hundreds of possible relatives based on our DNA. I start realizing that the common denominator in a lot of these different relationships is a person named Luella, somebody with the last name White, or somebody with the last name Dyer. So I'm like, okay. Unfortunately, though, it's difficult for me to make connections because in order to confirm these relationships, you're messaging these folks and they're going to respond back to you and say, yeah, this is true, or yes, this is not. Finally, I was able to get a hold of someone. I was able to connect with someone who the system said was my third cousin. So we share like a great great grandparent together. Maybe it was fourth cousin, great 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 grandparent together. A kind woman who responded, or two kind women. So one was a third cousin, and one was a fourth cousin. The fourth cousin, she had just gave me very shallow information, right? She said that she too had used the tool to meet with her dad. She told me what her dad's name was, and there was the name White again. So I'm like, okay, that's how we related. There's some connection between somebody with the last name White. At that time, the person that I am seeing as a common denominator, a woman by the name of Luella, I'm seeing Luella with 4 different last names because at the time I don't really know who she is. So I get in contact with this fourth cousin. She tells me what her father's name is and that she's come into contact with him using the app. And the name doesn't provide me with any information. So I asked her, did your father, once you met him, did he have any brothers? So she told me that he had 2 brothers that she was aware of. Neither of the names matched the name that my mother communicated to me was my father's name. So I didn't, she didn't respond. I just thought, okay, no big deal. Another woman who was my third cousin responded, and she too had the same people in her family tree. Some people with the name White, a woman with the name Luella, but the woman with the name Luella had a different last name. So I started realizing that this woman Luella must have had more than one marriage. Because she was coming up with a variety of different names, and then in each of the marriages that she had, there were children that came as a result of that marriage, 1+ children as a result of that marriage. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is the same person. Well, Ancestry.com helped me because it provides you these hints. So once I had built into my tree that this woman by the name of Luella could have a variety of different names, then the system confirmed that there was a Luella that the system was familiar with, that they connected parents to. So then I was able to connect Luella's mother and father, which helped me to connect even more cousins. So I was able to, but this one particular cousin was able to provide me a lot of information, and I learned from this cousin that Luella was either my grandmother, my great-grandmother, or my great-great-grandmother. I could not ascertain that because I would have to determine which of her children had a child that matched the name that I knew. So I had determined, based on a contact with one of these cousins, that it could be one of a couple of people. But I was not necessarily sure because the ancestry information plus the information that I gathered from these 2 cousins and the information that my mom had previously been providing me did not match. My mother gave me a specific name of the person. At that point, I realized that my father had to have one of 3 names. Either he had Luella's maiden name, her first husband's name, who died, her second husband's name, or her third husband's name. So I knew that it was one of those names, right? So I did the appropriate research, but really this cousin really helped me because I had determined that my father would have had to been one of Luella's sons. And Luella had, from what I could tell, Luella had 5 children, and 4 of them were sons. One of them were a set of twins, and then she had 2 sons with a man who had died by the time that she was raising the sons. Luella also died when she was 38 years old. She was born, I believe, in 1914 and died in like 1952. So Luella also died, so there's not a lot of information about her aside from in the short span of her life, her marriage and the children that she brought into the world. So I have determined that her son Charles was my father. The cousin was able to share a photo. Some of the information that was shared with me previously kind of matched. His name did not match, but based on the DNA, based on the matching and the conversation that I had, I'm assuming that this person had to be my father. So I'm telling my mom, I'm telling my brothers, like, I think this could be the person. And then, so my mom naturally, and I think this is a natural thing. My mom's a little embarrassed by the process. I think to her, I think me in pursuit of learning more about my father's side of the family was somehow, in her mind, a way of dishonoring, what she had done as a mother in the best way that she could. It didn't sit well with her. So she had not been particularly helpful in the process. In fact, whatever the opposite of helpful is, she had been. So I decided that I needed to talk to her some more about it, and I wanted her to be able to share any details that she could remember, but I didn't want to upset her. So I'd upset her. She's irate about the fact that this is not necessary. You're 40-something years old. What difference does it make? This is her perspective. So she ended up hanging up on me. Well, after that conversation that I had with this cousin about this gentleman by the name of Charles White, I'm just saying, well, the only way for me really to confirm moving forward is to really, my mom to provide additional information about her interactions with the man who was my father. So one of the things, so I call her, I say, Mom, I think I found the person. The challenge is this person was born in 1934. I just, that would make that person significantly older than you. Like, is that a possibility? And Mom said, no. I remember, one of the things that I remember explicitly about your father is that he was only 2 years older than me. So she said she knew his name, she knew his nickname, she knew how old he was, and there were a couple of other things that she knew about his body or something, that, in the event that information was relative, and it wasn't, because yuck, right? So I went back to the cousin, and I essentially said, well, my mom remembers these names, right? His first name, his nickname, and she calls that he's 2 years older than her. So that means that the person that we've been discussing is not my father. So what is the potential? So I started doing the math in my head based on what my mom said, how old this person was, and I determined that this person that I thought was my father, named Charles, could have had a child at the age of 20 that would have been exactly 2 years older than my mom. So I tell the cousin that, like, the person would have been born in 55, and they would have, here's the information that I'm assuming would be clear about this person based on the numbers. As my mom said, this person is 2 years older. It would make sense if this person had a child, Charles had a child in 1955, then we could confirm which of those is. Well, the challenge is that Charles had a lot of children. I learned maybe 20 plus children, and so it was relatively difficult to pinpoint which of those children, number one, was born in 1955, and which of those children, all of these, and another thing to note too is that all of the ancestors and all of the people that I had looked up so far are all in the state of Ohio. None of them are like in Seattle or Los Angeles or Portland or anywhere near. So on my mom's side, everybody was sort of near, like in a neighboring state or from one specific small area. But in this particular case, everybody that I have found so far was in Ohio, in the city of Dayton. So that's another thing is that the cousin, in the information that she knew that this gentleman by the name of Charles and potentially his siblings had not left the state of Ohio. And if they did leave the state of Ohio, they were in Kansas City and maybe Texas, but definitely not the West Coast. So I shared with her what my mom said. Here's the potential nickname. Here's the first name. Here's what I'm guessing would have been his date of birth based on the information that my mom provided, and that was sort of like late at night. So I think the conversation ended, and I asked her. She said, "Yeah, just keep me up to date on what you find." And I said, "Thank you." I had shared with her that my mom was born in 1957, and she had a brother who was also born in 1957. So she said, one thing I think I can do is I can ask him if he recalls any of who she was referring to as her Uncle Charles, if she could recall if he had any children in the 50s. That he was aware of, or if he grew up with any cousins who could have potentially been around his same age. So the next day, this is kind of where it gets kind of cracking. The next day, I think I was in class. I don't know. This is all on last Friday. I think I was in class or doing something, and I received a Facebook because I had invited the cousin that I had met to befriend me on Facebook, for which she obliged, and I'm grateful. So on Friday, let's see. I'm gonna make sure that I kind of capture this one. Sorry if this is like hard to follow, because some of my friends are like, yeah, maybe an easier way to tell the story. So on Friday at 11 o'clock, she messaged me to tell me that she spoke to her brother, who's the same age as my mom, and that he said that, number one, her Uncle Charles has several sons with the same name, Charles, that may be a couple years older than him, and that in his age group, and then she sent me some photos of individuals in the family, and one of them is a picture of four men, and it appears that those four men are at the funeral of the gentleman Charles White that I thought was my father, but could have been too old to be my father because my mom said he was 2 years apart. So I learned that this particular picture that has these four men are the four sons, or at least four of the sons of Charles. So I'm looking at all these guys and I'm like, well, one of them is extremely tall, and one of and I start kind of connecting some of the hints that um, uh, could be um, could be my father. And so maybe 20 minutes later, she sends me a YouTube video that says prayers for barefoot Pookie. Prayer for barefoot Pookie. So I click on the link, and it is this YouTube video with all of these Crips um, noting their deep desire to pray for the health of this person named Barefoot Pookie. And then seconds later, she sends me a Facebook video or reel from someone who posted a thing saying, "Rest in heaven, Barefoot Pookie." So she says, you should ask your mom if this is the person. So I go and look up the term Barefoot Pookie, and I see that Barefoot Pookie is this is what the AI overview of Barefoot Pookie says in my when I Google search it. It says Barefoot Pookie is the nickname of Angelo White, a former street fighter and leader of the Crips. White wrote a book about his early life called Barefoot Pookie, which was published in 2017. The book is about his childhood and how the harsh realities of the streets changed a child's path. White died in the hospital bed from stage 4 lung cancer. The cancer led to pelvic cancer, which made his arthritis worse. Then it goes on to talk about all of these videos and podcasts and things that he makes. But the key thing is the name that my mom has shared with me is the same name that comes up in this thing. And then I go back to look at this picture, and there in the picture is a person that I'm like, okay, that has to be my dad. So that's essentially how I found my dad. It was Ancestry.com, but it was primarily through the connection of what Ancestry.com called my fourth cousin. But really, after the two of us spoke, we learned that she was not actually my fourth cousin, because the woman Luella was her mother's mother. Her mother, Luella, was this cousin's grandmother. And Luella is essentially Luella was my great-grandmother. So, and I learned that in this discourse with her. So anyway, it's been pretty exciting to both use the online tool. The other thing that was very helpful is the cousin of mine was able to share with me the obituary of my grandfather. So through the obituary, I was able to see all of the persons who either were identified as his children, or his spouses, or his grandchildren. So I'm still in the process of identifying. I have found at least 4 persons on social media, because my father also had his own Facebook page in addition to the podcast and the YouTube videos. I was able to find individuals that identified as his children, so I guess would be my siblings, or at least what I believe to be a sister and a brother for sure. Maybe 2 brothers and a sister. But I can't, all I have is their Facebook, so I've messaged them. But anyway, to an extent that it's rather overwhelming. And I think I started off by saying um, how much we take for granted, you know, especially the traditional family infrastructure that we have, and how often we do not consider that that's not something that everybody has. And so it feels really strange. Um, it feels really strange, like watching somebody. I haven't been able to really watch the videos and some of the things, the subject matter, because of my father's history and his being a very well-known member of the Crips. Like a lot of his video and his content are about that, which naturally does not resonate with me because naturally I'm not a Crip. But I have been joking that in college I learned how to sea walk, and my favorite color is blue. So I thought that that was not that that matters. I I cannot fight. Um, now I can pray and trust the Lord to fight my battles, but that's about the only thing that would make me a winner. I'm a failed. I would be a failed gang member or a thug. I would certainly need the protection of others. Anyway, that's a whole different. But I do know how to sea walk a little bit. But I watched some of my father's memorial services, and it was fascinating to see all these people in blue, men and women, just like sea walking all over the place. Actually, it underscored the fact that I actually do not know how to sea walk in the way that I thought that I could, but I'm not certain that this is something to be proud of or not to be proud of. So I was able to order my father's book, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm looking forward to um, connecting with family members, and have really grateful to my brothers, people who are in my inner circle who have really supported me and encouraged me to do this, and just not been like, that's a dumb idea, or why are you doing that, but really tried to encourage me. So anyway, I will keep you updated if we're friends. If we're not friends and we connect, feel free to ask. But I thought that this would be a good thing to talk about. God bless you.